Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the show where two mates from across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and everything green and gold. As you can probably tell, I don't have an accent. I can't pass for Australian. Nick's not here. He's dealing with some family issues, so it is I, Iowa Joe, leading this show. And this week, I am joined by NFLTR.com podcaster Hilmi. And he told me not to even try to bother pronouncing his last name, so we're going to just stick with Hilmi. So, Hilmi, it's good to have you on. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Yeah, it's 7-something a.m. We had a hell of a time just arranging time zones here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but you're not Australian, but did you start the podcast saying good day, or you're just channeling Nick?
I was trying to do my best good day, but it doesn't roll off the tongue for me. So I'm hoping our listeners don't tune out after that week try of being Australian for a second.
All right.
So no, Nick usually starts us. I always make Nick start us out with a good day, and obviously him being Australian, he's a little bit better at it than I am.
Yeah, sure. We'll drop a bunch of mates and everything, and then if it gets obnoxious, you let me know, right?
Yeah. I'll try and throw some out there too, or talk about a kangaroo, or maybe another shrimp on the bobby or something. But I just alienated all our Australian listeners, so
It's all right.
As you guys can tell, this is probably going to be a goofy episode because Nick, everybody who listens knows, he runs the show. I'm just basically the comedy relief, so hopefully we can get through it. But Hilmi wanted to, we've been working to get Hilmi on for a little bit. As everybody knows, we kind of bring the international flavor to everything. Me being from the United States, Nick being from Australia. And we had Wendell on a few weeks ago, who was Brazilian. So we try to cross seas every once in a while, and Hilmi DM'd me one night and said, "Hey, why don't we get together sometime?" So this is it. As everybody also knows, if they've listened, I am just returning from a week vacation in the Promised Land, the Mecca, whatever you want to nickname it, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was up there for a few of they weren't open practices, but I still can say I was up there for OTAs. They wouldn't let me in. I tried, but hey, what can you do about it? But Hilmi has some experiences being in Green Bay also. So we figured we would take this episode and just talk about what each other has done up there, and talk a lot about the Packers, but maybe also a little bit about Green Bay itself and the surrounding areas. So, Hilmi, since this is your first time on, I got to ask. I asked this of Nick. I asked this of Wendell, and all that. How did you, being a guy from Turkey living in Uzbekistan, become a Packers fan and podcaster?
And podcaster. So I live in Uzbekistan for a year now. I'm in construction, so we move around a lot.
Gotcha.
So I started playing. I was always amazed by football. I'm 43 years old, so all of what I say.
We finally found somebody who's older than me.
Yes. So everything I say is think late 90s, no internet, very few TV, especially in Turkey. So I was always fascinated by football, but seeing bloopers and big highlights once in a while from wherever in movies. So in 97, I entered college, and lo and behold, there's a football team in Turkey. And college football is big in Turkey. We have a bunch of teams, 30, 40 teams. So I signed up right away, broke my pinky the first day, but whatever, kept playing. Around the same time, I started watching football. We got one game a week, maybe, and it was on Fox Sports Turkey, and Fox showed NBC team, the NFC teams. And I noticed that around 97, this guy wearing 4 was having a lot of fun on the field. And I'm all about fun. And I said, oh, this guy, he plays well, and he's... And I also bought my first Madden game that year, and the Packers were rated quite high. I liked the colors, and I liked everything. And I said, well, what do I know? I'm 17, so that's my team now. And since then, it could be the confirmation bias, but since then, everything I've experienced, heard, lived, watched about Green Bay and their team. I loved it. And in 2002, I went to do my master's degree in Purdue. Go Boilers! And there, all my feelings were confirmed. I experienced what it was like to be Midwest nice, as you would know.
Yeah.
And then I got a car in my second year. I drove up there twice to watch games, and they're even nicer up there. It's amazing, but I know not stop at Minnesota because the nice stops at the border. No, I'm kidding, but this would be a good segue to when.
But he's really not.
Yeah, it's really not. So when I was there, I went twice to Packers games, and then once when we were visiting family in DC, and I flew there for a game.
Okay.
Out of my 3 games, my record is 1-2. The Eagles beat us, Donald McNabb. The Jacksonville Jaguars, David Garrard. Who even remember David Garrard? But my third game was the Bears, which we do not lose at home to.
Yeah. But, that's... I mean, me living a little bit closer, you're even on par with me with games. I've been to 4 of them in my life. Yes. So you're even equal with me, and I live a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But Green Bay, they get a bad rap because of the small town. There's nothing to do. There's all this and that. But I think that's what makes the team better. Because they are a community team. They're not, they're not lost in a big city. They're not lost because they've got 2 other major league teams in the city to share with. So what you're saying is basically true. It's hard not to love Green Bay. I mean, I won't completely agree with you with Midwest nice. There are, there are the bad ones around, and I have a habit of being one. So I am a self-admitted asshole, so we're good on that one. But I mean, and even in all the times that I've been up, because I usually just go up for the training camps, but COVID kind of put a kink into that one for a while. Nothing. I mean, they're getting bigger, but nothing really changes. I can still go down one road and there's Cabela's over there, or there's there's a Quick Trip on every corner, and there's all Culver's everywhere. So I mean, while it's upgrading, it's still staying the same, and it's still a small small town team. But I have to say that I was up there. When was the last time that you were up there, Hilmi?
20 years ago, 2000.
20 years ago. So it's really changed since you've been up there. So
yeah.
And it's only been 4 years, because the last time I went up was 2019, and then, like I said, COVID kind of hit and made things a little bit hard to get up there. But so I made it back this year for OTAs, and I mean, just in those 4 years, it seemed like everything changed. There was a lot more stores, and of course, Lambeau's changed tremendously. Right now, they're working on the big new indoor practice facility that's connected to Lambeau and the underground players parking lot. And it's complete. I mean, there are still things that are the same. Like, the pro shop is still where the pro shop, well, probably not since 2003, but, the pro shop is still in the general area since the last time I've been up. But, it always amazes me when I get there, because with it being a small town, when you first get onto the interstate heading towards there, you can see Lambeau. You don't have other buildings drowning out Lambeau, and it's hard to keep your eye on the road when you see the just massive Lambeau field off in the corner, because you're just like, you're like a moth to a light. You gotta go there. So, now, you said you went to a few games. Have you ever been to like a training camp or anything like that in your time there, or was it just strictly to go up for the games?
Well, back then I wasn't a broadcaster, or I didn't do podcasts. I didn't do the TV show yet at that time. So I just went as a fan to do the experience. And my experience was different because you don't have the phone, so you cannot say, "Oh, let's meet up, let's do this." Where's Hotkovitz when he's not around? There's not even a weak catchman at the time. So at that time, Huber's still writing print media. The Master is not on ESPN. There's Greg Bedard was around, and Tyler Dunn wasn't a complete piece of whatever. And so it was really different. What I ended up doing, if I could get into that now.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, I went to the pro shop, of course, got a few stuff. Not this, what I'm wearing, but it's the Green Bay Packers shirt. I bought a bunch of stuff, shot glasses, everything, which I don't know where they are now, but I had a lot of fun with them. Pendants, car fridge magnets, everything I bought. The pro shop was there. The Hall of Fame was there.
Yep.
So I went there and saw 3 trophies, not 4. And then the atrium was much smaller, no title down district. So I ended up eating at the Favre's 2-minute grill. Yeah. I don't know if it's there now.
It's not Favre's anymore, but as far as I know, the restaurant is still there. I can't remember I think it's like Legends or something like that.
Oh, okay. If it was Rogers something grill, it would be 30 seconds because he needs less time. 2 minutes is too much time for him.
Too much.
Yeah. What I did end up doing is I asked around what to do. They say tailgating. All right. Yeah. So I went tailgating and I was looking around, and I didn't have a car. I did drive up there, which was a 2-door, like small, cheap sports car that I bought for $5 and sold for 1.5 when I left the US. Not the best tradesman. So I went there. I didn't do tailgating, but I was ready to buy some burgers and beers and stuff. And turns out you don't do that.
No.
Turns out what you do is just show up. They ask you, "Hi, honey, where are you from? I'm Turkish." And then they shower you with burgers and hot dogs and beer. They're that nice. And I had a lot of time. I played games. I met people. I talked to people. We didn't exchange Instagram because we didn't have. We didn't exchange Twitter. We didn't have. And I did have Facebook, which was the Facebook at the time, 3 separate words, but they didn't because I was in a good college and they weren't, you know how it goes, you know?
Yeah.
It was edu web email address back then. So I didn't make connections, but I made memories, let's say. It was a lot of fun. And during the Jaguars game, it was the coldest I have been in my life. Despite the multiple layers of support, I am prepared for anything. I am never caught unaware. That shocked me. I had multiple layers of socks, 2 pairs of gloves. I threw away my old coat and bought a big, thick Packers coat in the whatever shop there was there, not the pro shop, but somewhere else. And I had chemical warmers, which I had several. I broke them, put it in my hands, put it in my feet. Nothing works. Nothing worked. I had to stay another night while I thought I was going to die of the cold. And if anybody knows, I think it's the Christmas 2023 or 2024 game against Jacksonville. They beat us. That was a very cold day. I've had worse days since because for construction I move around. Right. That really shocked me, and it's the frozen tundra for a reason, guys. In Australia, people, just, if you're ever going, it is not a joke. I know you're tough; nothing phases you. You deal with 6-foot spiders. It's cold up there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody. I think that's why everybody drinks so heavily in the tailgating. It just is that way. That's how they can handle the cold. The coldest game that I went to was. Well, let me take that back. I went to a game in 1999, the dreaded Ray Rhodes year, and it was my grandpa got tickets from a guy that he worked with, and he gave them to me and my mom, and we went up, and it snowed. It was during November. It was around Thanksgiving, but it wasn't on Thanksgiving, and it snowed. But we didn't know because the tickets that my grandpa got were box seats, so we were inside the indoor seating. So we prepped to go up there for cold, but then when we got there, we were overheating because we were inside. We didn't have to worry about coats and all that. But the coldest game that I went to that I was actually in the bowl for was December 2014, and it was against the Atlanta Falcons. And it was the game where the Packers were up before halftime, and then Julio Jones turned it into a one-man mission to almost come back and beat the Packers. But that was probably the coldest. I think they said that it was like 20 degrees above Fahrenheit above zero, but then with the wind chill factor, it knocked it to like negative 15 degrees. And it snowed pregame, but it was one of them wet snows that as soon as it hit something, it soaked. So, the only reason we were on our feet and all that stuff was just to stay warm. We were bouncing around, bumping off against each other just to keep ourselves warm. And but that was probably the coldest, and I did end up coming back and getting sick from it. So, but I would stay with my grandpa at that time because my grandpa lived in Sheboygan, which is about an hour south of Green Bay. And I came back that night, and he looked at me, goes, "Was it cold?" I said, "Yeah, I probably won't warm up for 2 weeks, but it was worth it." So, yeah, but it's so weird because you can go from one extreme to another. Like the early September games, it can get so hot up there, and then you turn around in October and November, it can start getting so friggin' cold up there that you never know what to prep for anymore. But yeah, I've always heard that with the tailgates. I'm not one to. I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank hard. I haven't drank any alcohol in 3 years, but even up to when I started going to games, I very rarely drank. And then, like I said, at the time, I would be driving an hour back and forth, and I wasn't going to drink and drive. So I never got into that, but I had always been told that the tailgates, you just wander around the parking lots and people just start handing you stuff. So and that's why another reason why I say, Green Bay is just a great place because the fans and the people are welcoming in that aspect. You can even show up wearing Bears stuff and they're still going to welcome you in. They're still going to feed you and all that. But the minute the game happens, they're going to rip your ass for everything because you're a Bears fan. But they're still going to make sure you're well fed and well liquored up and all that stuff before that happens. But so I'm trying to remember. I think I remember that Jaguars game because wasn't that the one where Donovan Darius almost took off Robert Ferguson's head, and Robert Ferguson was never the same after that.
You're not talking about the clothesline on Corn Robinson, right?
No, this was on Robert Ferguson. That was because Robert Ferguson got hurt and he was never the same after that one.
Yeah, I wondered what happened to him. I don't know if that was the game.
Yeah,
you get less of the game if you're actually there.
Yeah. That's for sure. Well, now they were putting up bigger jumbotrons when I was up there, so you wouldn't even have to watch the game on the field. You just look up at the jumbotron and watch it from that point. But I'm trying to remember because I think I actually remember that game because, like I said, I remember that hit on Robert Ferguson, and it almost killed me watching that hit, let alone his how he felt about it.
Oh, it was in December 19, 2004. So I
okay, so it was
yeah.
You were there the year before, so but yeah, I was gonna say I kind of remember one of those, and I remember that hit specifically because I know a lot of people were really upset with it because Donovan Darius was basically headhunting.
Yeah, I got it. It says he was ejected for a clothesline hit on Robert Ferguson with 4:41 remaining. That is the game. Yes. I remember the clothesline. I was there. So it's not Corn Robinson, it's Robert Ferguson, yeah.
Yeah. Because like I said, I remember the hit, and then he just never was the same again because he was always gun shy after that. And he never, and which was sad because he was kind of an up and comer, and to have him end like that just kind of sucked. But so anyway, I think the last time you were there, the Hall of Fame and the Pro Shop were still kind of joined in one. Once you finished the Hall of Fame, you basically entered into the Pro Shop, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was like a gift shop, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, when I was just up there recently, or I mean, just up there a couple weeks ago, well, I mean, this has been the way it's been for a while, but the Pro Shop is just one full building in itself, and the Hall of Fame is still in the same area, but they don't lead into each other. It doesn't feel like a gift shop for the Hall of Fame anymore.
No.
It's definitely its own entity.
It was really small that I remember.
Yeah, and now it's huge. This is like walking into like I don't want to say a Walmart because Walmarts can be pretty big, but I mean it's got the feel of that you're just walking into a department store. But so I'm trying to think, because I think I was up there around the same time, or in the same years that you were. So I'm trying to think off of those years. I don't know. My memory is not the greatest anymore, but so like when I was up there a couple weeks ago, of course, a lot of the parking lot was closed off, so you couldn't really get into any of the sections, but they still had some of it up there. And if anybody knows me, they know I'm a pretty big autograph hound. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always been into autographs. So I got to go up there for at least a day after one of the practices and talk to some of the players and that. And, it just, that's another thing that I love about this team is you have that chance to interact with the players better than what it seems like other teams do. And it just gives you like a hometown feeling. It makes it easier because it doesn't make them feel like they're untouchable superstars. Obviously you got the ones that are bigger that won't, interact. They just go straight to their car and leave. But you still have that interaction with some of them where you don't get as starstruck because, they'll just come up and talk to you like a regular person. You don't have to worry about, 3 6'8", 400-pound bodyguards pushing you out of the way and stuff like that. So, but I'm trying to think. 2003 and 2004 was still the Sherman years, right? Mike Sherman.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that. The guy was an offensive genius. He just couldn't run a team to save his life.
I know he was also the GM, so that was the mistake with him.
Yeah, when they signed him to his contract, they gave him the GM powers, and he really hurt this team. I mean, like I said, he was a hell of a coach. He really hurt the team with the way he was running things.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is that Mike Holmgren left because they wouldn't give him GM powers.
Yeah,
and then they lost him, and then they went around and did the same thing for Sherman.
Makes you wonder what would have happened if Holmgren would have hung around a little bit longer.
Yeah. I think that they would have seen another Super Bowl with Favre.
Yeah,
Holmgren, as I remember, was really good.
Yeah, Holmgren was a great coach. I just don't know how he would have been as a GM. I don't know if they gave him the GM powers in Seattle, so I don't know if he was the one per se building the teams up there. But
I think he did, because he also had a advisory GM role in Cleveland after he stopped actively coaching. So I think he had in Seahawks too, and he went to the Super Bowl with Matt Hasselbeck.
Yeah.
So he was really good.
Which, there you go, is a former Packer draft pick, Matt Hasselbeck. That's a name to remember. I remember the year they drafted him because my mom took me up to training camp. And I thought he was the new punter. I thought they had drafted, because he was on the practice field wearing number 11 and he was punting balls down the field. So I thought he was the punter. And I was like, well, who the hell is that punter? Because, he's really not bad, but he's not like great either. And it turned out it was Matt Hasselbeck.
Yeah, and back in those days, for field goals, the holders were backup QBs, not the punters.
Yeah.
So he did hold a lot of goals.
Yeah. So I kind of wish they would go back to that in a way, because that would still give it would make the defenses think a little bit, because okay, well, it's the backup quarterback. Is he going to run a fake, or are they really going to kick? But
but if you are doing that on the after the touchdown, then you have to do it 15 yards instead of 2. So you cannot fake PATs are less common now.
Right. So, but so you do a podcast.
Yeah.
How did you get into the Packer podcasting?
Here's what happened. In 2005, a year after I finished my master's, and I went back to Turkey, and then you have to do 6 months of military, because that part of the world. I did my 6 months, and then I wanted to get back into football, so I found a team to coach, which I ended up playing again, because it turns out 25 is not too young to stop playing. And then I also wanted to write, so my podcast partner is the founder of NFL TR, which he did when he was 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I reached out to him. They pointed me towards him. I reached out to him. I said I can write NFL or NCAA, which I didn't write one NCAA article ever. So a lot of years we wrote, but then we would be also talking on the phone for hours at a time and he happened to be a Packers fan at the time. So we talked a lot. After a while, we said that we could turn this into a podcast, but we did that 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, we did a pilot. We enjoyed it a lot, but we kind of forgot about it. 2 years after that, which is 8 years ago now, we started. And we are in our 8th year, so it's not we didn't get into it in COVID or something.
Right.
We do a lot. We used to do 3 hours, and then we would realize, it didn't record. No problem. We do another 3 hours, the same subject. We used a bunch of different methods of talking and recording. We tried a lot of things, and we do it in Turkish. That's the thing. NFL TR is for Turkey. So, or Turkey. We recently changed it. Our listeners are all Turkish, so we have a niche market, but we have it cornered.
Right. Yeah.
So the last 2 years there are some more podcasts popping up, because now it's all the fashion.
Yeah,
but we are the flagship now. We are still the best. But I enjoy watching some of the other podcasts, listening and watching. We do the entire NFL, not just the Packers. So we have to be on top of a lot of things.
Right. Yeah. I understand that. I'm glad Nick decided that we were just going to do Packers, because I don't know if I would be able to handle doing the whole NFL. But so I'm trying to form a question here. So you're basically the flagship in Turkey. Well, no, let me go with this question, because this is something Nick and I have talked about before. With you being an international fan, do you find that you deep dive into a lot of other podcasts to get your information? I know, like Nick has said before, that he follows almost all Packer podcasts, just because there's not a lot in Australia, or a lot of people in Australia that he can talk to them about this stuff. So he, fills that space with podcasts and all that other stuff. Is that something you have to deal with too, or is it a big enough thing in Turkey or Uzbekistan where you're at right now where you can get your fill?
That's not a problem. Now everything's online now. So of course I hardly got any real life football interaction in Turkey, let alone Uzbekistan. I used to drive a lot for work, back and forth at one point in my life. So I downloaded and listened to a lot of podcasts, a lot of Packers podcasts too. But now I don't do as much, because I have, even though I don't live with my family now, I have very little time to do anything basically. And podcasts are too much drawn out. It's not something you go for information, But
yeah,
just to pretend like you're not all alone in the world, and there's like a couple guys talking Packers, and you just listen to them in a passive way while you're washing the dishes. It's sad, but it's a little bit not sad. I get most of my information from Packers Twitter. It's amazing how nice they are and how much on top of their things they are. And,
but they can be the biggest babies in the world. They can have the biggest drama fights in the world.
Oh, I don't want to name names, but holy hell! I mean, it's amazing because they invested so much in it.
Yep.
Like, now that I'm 43, I emotionally divested myself. I don't become happy or sad. I don't live and die with the Packers for the last 10 years as I used to. So it also changed since I started the podcast. I'm not a giant fan. I follow it as close as anyone. So more than a fan, I would be like maybe the world's one of the biggest Packers aficionados, or however you pronounce that.
Right.
So it's a giant 20-something year episode of All or Nothing on Packers that I'm watching every single day. So I'm on top of my Packers, but I don't like smash things around when we lose anymore. Last time I did that was could be the one where it went to overtime against Kurt Warner and the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So, I like when we lost the Brandon Bostic game, I just said, "Oh well," and turned it off and went to sleep.
Yeah.
No, that's how it goes.
Oh, I get you. I just, it's kind of the thing between me and Nick, where, like I said, Nick says that he spends a lot of time listening to podcasts and the Twitter and stuff like that, whereas me, I can walk down the street and be wearing something Packers, and somebody will stop me and want to talk for an hour or whatever. So I don't, I listen to some podcasts, but I don't listen to a lot of them. Not that they're not great creators. It's just, I don't need it to fill in my time. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make it sound like, they're not worth my time. No, it's just, it's different when I can walk down the street and talk to somebody for an hour compared to like Nick, who has to wait for the next podcast to drop before he can, be involved in Packers. So it's always interesting about how international fans, how much they're into it, because sometimes it feels like international fans are more invested into it than people who are actually near the teams. I mean, I've got friends in the UK that one specifically, Peter Jones, amazing guy, but he knows so much about the Packers that I couldn't even, he could probably write an encyclopedia of the Packers with the knowledge that he has for it. Whereas me, I forget, who was the running back for the Packers in, 2015. It's one of those things that I'd have to sit here and Google it before I could remember it. And then once I remember it, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, he did this, this, and this. So it's always amazing how much more it seems international fans are invested than domestic fans.
I will agree with that. And I used to do what you did. I used to wear my Packers jersey, whatever one I had at the time. I had one with number 8 and my name in the back. One of those custom ones I had, and I would wear it to bars at night in West Lafayette, Indiana, to see if I can get some conversation going. And it's not always the nicest conversation because it was Indiana. A lot of people are from Chicago, and they happen to be drunk around the times I go there. So it wasn't really nice. And when I drive up to games, how familiar are you with the song "The Bears Still Suck"?
Yes, sir. That was my ringtone for years.
Oh, okay. So it says there, if you drive to Soldier Field, they make you pay a toll. They do. And also, if you drive through Soldier Field with your car and chalk painted "Go Pack Go," because I'm driving up for games. So I paint car Packers this and that. I have the antenna ball wearing a cheese head and everything. I am like all Green Bay driving up to games. They harass you on the road.
Yep.
It's not. They are not very nice in Chicago. I know it's a bigger, colder town.
Yeah.
But come on. On the other hand, when I'm back in Turkey and I meet some Americans, they're usually like diplomatic missions, military. Sometimes they're missionaries, and sometimes they're just teachers. All of them are teachers.
Yeah.
But they're not as into football as I am. So they don't. Some of them aren't fans. Not to be sexist, but women are less interested in football, and men sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And even if they are, not all of them are interested in the Packers. So I'm like, I want to speak about the Packers with somebody. And my Turkish community is not all Packers fans, of course. And
right.
I cannot do it. And I don't want to talk too much about the Packers on my podcast because our listeners said, okay, too much about the Packers.
Yeah.
Okay, dial it down. So that's why I stalked you on Twitter and I said, I want to speak about the Packers in English. Come on.
Yeah,
I did a couple episodes with the Packers Without Borders guys. It was a lot of fun. And now with you guys. This is amazing. I'm having a great time.
Well, like I said, there are a lot of good creators out there. You know, Packers Without Borders. We've done a lot with the Game on Wisconsin cruise. And we've got some more guests coming up that we're scheduling from different. We've had Pack a Day guys, people on here, but yeah, we've got some more guests. I won't say anything here, but they're a little bit higher profile than we've had before. So it's just there's just a lot of amazing content out there that they all work together also. You know, it's very rare that if I send a message to somebody saying, hey, you know, we're a small podcast, but we would like to get you to come on. Would you come on? You know, they'll jump at it. Now, like, you know, and like a lot of other people know, we do weird recording times, so it doesn't always match up for everything. So, you know, sometimes they balk at that and say, well, you know, can you do this time instead of this time? Or, so we're a little bit flexible like that, but, you know, that's how me and Nick got started. Was he just wanted somebody to talk Packer football with, and I just happened to be wanting to get back into podcasting. I had started a small podcast with a guy I knew a few years back, and it really never took off. So we stopped, and I had kind of went away from it for a while, and then I always laugh at this because I make fun of Nick all the time about it, but I saw some random post on Reddit, Packers Reddit, saying, hey, I want to do a podcast about the Packers. You know, is anybody in Australia interested? And I said, well, I'm not from Australia, but you know, I think we can make something work. And that's pretty much how we started. So, you know, it's like I said, there's a good community out there, and I love meeting new people with it. I've met some of the greatest people in the world doing podcasts, and you know, it's so much fun interacting with them on Twitter, and sometimes even getting to meet them in person and whatever. But you know, now that the world's starting to kind of come back to some kind of norm, I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to do like meet and greets at some point and say, hey, you know, we're all going to be here at this one time. Let's just meet up and do one big show or something. And, you know, the big goal is trying to get Nick over, because like I said, Nick's never been to Green Bay. So that's the end goal for everything. So
yeah, I can imagine it. But I had an easier time. I happened to be there. I just drove like 6 hours north and I was there.
Yeah.
On the 2 times I drove up there. So it wasn't that big of a stretch. If you're anywhere in the continental US, you can just take a flight. You don't need to save up a lot, but he's literally halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Must be really hard.
I think we figured he's 16 hours difference between just me and him. So yeah, it's a big difference. But you know, some people can, some people can't. I know he loves to tell the story that a couple years ago when the Packers were close to the Super Bowl, he had just started a new job, and he told his boss, if the Packers go to the Super Bowl, I'm leaving. So, but, you know, you said you wanted to talk Packers. I think we've covered a lot of the other stuff. Let's go ahead and start talking about some of the Packers, you know, right now with what's going on with the Packers. Obviously, they finished up their OTAs. So the next thing up is training camp. I don't figure there's going to be any big moves between now and then, but I figures, maybe some of the UDFAs might get cut, some new ones signed in. The Packers have this habit of always making some kind of roster move a week or two before the starting training camp. But how do you think the roster is filling out right now?
Oh, well, no, I don't agree that this year is totally a rebuild, but I call it more like recovering from salary cap hell.
Yeah.
And as you do, you have a lot of roster holes, and your QB is basically a rookie with a lot of offseason experience, let's say, 2 years of it. And so it's good that expectations are a little low for the Packers right now, because then this is where their draft and develop strategy really works, because it's not just not getting players through free agency. It's also you tend to go for smart, athletic guys who are raw. You could go for these guys, and that works for the Packers because they can wait a year or two. And look at how long Rashan Gary took to develop. And the way I read it and what I've seen from a few practices and what I read from beat writers I trust, a lot of the top prospects we drafted this year are raw. The tight ends, even if they're not raw, tight ends take 2-3 years to develop anyway. Lucas Van Ness, as good as he is, he can just contribute this year. I don't know if he would be a full-time starter, especially in the first half of the year. So I would call this team young and raw. So there's a lot of hope, but to make any successful season, maybe a winning season, some kind of playoff run, to put it all together, you would need a lot of things to go right. But for the season to go down the drain, you just need a couple of things to go wrong. You have roster
as we could tell from last year.
Yeah, definitely. you fracture a thumb. Your lineman never recovers from his injury. Defense, does their thing, and then suddenly you lost X in a row, and you don't recover from that. Yeah.
Right.
So those are my expectations.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm not going to say anything negative about Lucas Van Ness. I make it pretty well known that I'm a University of Iowa fan, so I'm not going to downgrade anything. Matter of fact, the first jersey I've bought in 5 years was a Lucas Van Ness jersey, so really banking high on him. But yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it's a complete rebuild. But I don't think this is also a Super Bowl contending team right away. Can they make it to the Super Bowl? Sure, any team can make it to the Super Bowl. Hell, we didn't think they were going to make it to the Super Bowl in the 2010-11 season. But, they ended up winning it all. So it just depends on what how they develop, how they mesh, and like the saying goes, any given Sunday, it can happen. Now, I know Nick went on a big breakdown of Brian Gutekunst's tenure last week's episode, so we're not going to do a complete redo of Nick's episode. But, this team still has, I would consider some holes that it's going to be interesting to see how they can fill the gaps with them. Are the draft picks going to step in? Because there's going to be a lot of young guys that need to step up. Safety is a position that I think, it's a big question mark. Is Darnell Savage going to be able to turn that corner and become the guy that we need? Is Anthony Johnson Jr. going to be able to step up and, contribute being a 7th round draft pick this year? And then you got just as much as Rudy Ford and guys like that, who are the ones they signed, Tavares Moore and Jonathan Owens, as much as, they brought them in, to me right now, they're just guys. They really aren't top-notch replacements. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do at that spot. And I think, like I said, that's the one glaring hole. And then number 2, I know this is a weird one, but the kicking game. We're going from, the Silver Fox, Mason Crosby, to a relatively unknown and Anders Carlson. I know they're saying good things about him in practice, but it's practice. I don't want to go on the Allen Iverson tirade of we're just talking about practice, but we're not going to know him until he gets into game situations.
Exactly, and I always said that kicking is a game done with the mind, not the leg, with the head.
Right.
So so he's in the NFL now, so we don't know if his psyche can hold up to kicking in the NFL with all the pressure, storied franchise, this and that, and maybe he got some pointers from his brother Dave. We don't know, but it's really, really hard. And much as Packers have been spoiled by years of Hall of Fame QB play, we also had, except for a couple of years there and there, here and there, we had a lot of stability at the kicker position too with Mason Crosby. So we're spoiled with that. We are not one of the teams that change 3 kickers in a year. It's just not us. So it's a concern too. And back to what you were talking about, the defensive backs, it's a big concern for me this year. I mean, if we are really talking about, do the Packers have a shot? In my experience, and I'll back it up from my years of coaching football too, if there's a problem in the skill positions or something, if a receiver can't get open, no problem. We don't pass to him, we don't throw to him, and that's fine. You can hide the bad player in the offense any day, even in the line. But in the defense, if you have a weak link in the chain, they will expose you and they will exploit you.
Yep.
So if you are not good at one position in the backfield, safety, it's an issue. And if you have questionable contributor in Darnell Savage, as much as I like the guy, so that suddenly is a big area of concern. It's 2023. Everybody's passing. Who's going to help with Justin Jefferson? Can you basically cover DJ Moore now? We don't know. And our corners tend to be get injured a lot. We don't know how Eric Stokes is coming back. Jury's still out on Russell Douglas, as much as I like him too. And just one possible Hall of Famer cornerback doesn't cut it anymore in the NFL. You need 3 good cover cornerbacks and dependable safeties. We don't have that. So as good as the front 7 could be, and it should be, we have Clark, Wyatt, and the edge. We have 3 guys at edge rusher that can rotate once Gary's back. Linebackers as good as it's going to be. Kevin Campbell and the other first rounder,
Quay Walker.
Yeah, Quay Walker. So that's okay. But comparing to what the standard for stopping the run is in Green Bay, which is nothing. So we should be able to take a step up. But if you can't defend the pass, the defense is going to be exploited, and then Jordan Love is going to try to play hero ball a lot, and we don't know if he has it in him, especially at this point. So a lot of concerns, a lot of question marks. So we know we're not going to be getting free agents. So as you said, a lot of things, a lot of people have to step up in their first or second year. It's hard, but any shot at even winning the division, a lot of rookies have to develop very, very fast.
They do. And, the Packers have had, what's the word for it? They've had success drafting the year before they need it instead of the year they do need it. But like you said, there's been injuries and everything else. As Rashawn Gary, I know Rashawn was quoted that he's prepping to start week 1. Well, that's pretty, optimistic of him. It's for an ACL injury, considering we've seen, the low side of Bakhtiari dealing with his to the high side of, Elton Jenkins dealing with his. So we've got to temper our expectations for what Rashawn, or when Rashawn is going to return, and what he's going to be like when he does return. We've got, they drafted Van Ness. He's, like you said, he's raw. They have JJ Enagbare. He really showed up last year. I know Nick and I talked highly of him all year when he was put in, but he was a rookie last year. Is he going to be able to take that next step this year and be that solid rotational guy until Van Ness gets up to speed and Rashawn gets up to speed? Preston's not getting any younger. Is he going to be able to continue to have his success, or is he going to start declining, kind of like Adrian Amos? Nobody figured Amos would drop off like he did, but that was like an immediate drop. So, and with a new starting quarterback, this defense is going to have to be relied on. They're going to have to try to cover the mistakes Jordan's going to make. Jordan, I kind of compared Jordan a little bit to Favre. And when he throws the ball, it's either going to be touchdown or interception. There's not really going to be an in-between on it unless he starts learning, okay, maybe I don't make this throw at this time. Maybe I just, make the check down and go with that. I don't try to force it in between, three defenders. But the thing with him, he's got an arm on him. He's got legs so he can get outside the pocket. I hate to judge a guy off of just a small amount of time, but that little bit he was in for the Eagles game, amazing. That little bit he played against Detroit the year before, I thought was pretty good. It wasn't great. Obviously, the Packers didn't win that game, but, I thought he still was decent. There were some mistakes made, but, when aren't there mistakes made with a young quarterback? And so the preseasons I thought were pretty good. He's just got to work on a few things, but he's going to make his mistakes. We've got young receivers on that side too. They're going to make mistakes. I know Nick is the biggest Christian Watson fan you'd ever want to meet right now, but Watson is going to have his issues. He's until he gets comfortable enough and can make that step, he's going to have his issues. Dobbs is the same way. Torrey, I'm hoping, can make that next step. The three guys that were drafted this year, I'm hoping can contribute, but who knows until we actually start getting into games. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what my next question or topic should be, because we just covered most of it right there. The running game is going to be another thing that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, because as we know, A.J. Dillon's contract's done at the end of the year. They're going to have to make a decision on Aaron Jones. They drafted Lou Nichols in the 7th round. Mm-hmm. They got my boy Tyler Goodson there. And Goodson, from what I understand, has really been working his butt off. He actually was working out with Aaron Jones throughout the offseason. So, we could be seeing him step up. A little bit, me being the Iowa homer, hopes he does make that next step and he can continue to be a Packer. But if I take the Iowa bias out of it, I have been hearing good things out of him from the offseason. So he will be a guy I will be keeping my eye on when training camp hits. What do you think of the running back situation? Do we keep all those guys? Who's going to stick around for next year and maybe further, or do they just start completely over?
Oh, I think it's going to be a major overhaul next year for the following reasons. Aaron Jones, as much as he helped us out with his contract, he'll probably not be here next year. And A.J. Dillon is up for his contract, we know. And again, as much as fans love him, and I love him, he's the nicest guy in the community. Yeah, and it's not. You can tell he's not faking it. But it is a business, and he might not be around for his second contract. So we don't know who's going to be in the backfield. It should be a certainty at this point is that David Bakhtiari would be moving on, because his contract is something else too. I don't expect him. So the running game is not going to be getting so much help after this year. Add this to the fact that if Jordan Love and the receiving corps doesn't become what people hope they would become, it goes hand in hand. If he doesn't command as much respect in the pass game as Rodgers does, people are going to be keying on the run. So it's going to be harder. And, this team, since Matt LaFleur came, this team started morphing into more of a running team, as I think they should.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. you think you're a big physical guy, but you still have to protect your QB. So remember in the years of like Mike McCarthy, people were criticizing him because we didn't have road graders like Dallas, and we had finesse blockers, and they were dancers. And it's not that. I know it's 2023. This team right now should be a running team. A couple of years down the road, with all the people we drafted, sure, it could be the other way. Depends on how Jordan Love turns out to be. But we will still have moderate success this year in the running game. Next year, who knows who's going to step up. And the thing about running backs is that a running back can make significant contributions and show where he is, who he is as a football player, even in their rookie year. So we see a lot of like 6th round draft picks becoming fantasy football darlings in their first year. So that could always happen. But if it doesn't, then we are going to go back to the years then who we don't know who our running back is. So
the Sam Congato years.
Sam Congato, Vernon Morency, Ty Montgomery.
Yeah.
Ty Montgomery, James Starks, Ryan Grant. Those were actually 2 decent guys. But since then, Sam Congato, the doctor is in, but he's not on the field.
I completely agree. I would absolutely hate to lose. As much as everybody loves A.J. Dillon, I would honestly hate to lose Aaron Jones because I think he is an amazing person. He's not only a great player, but he's just an amazing human being. And I think that would be more of a loss. Don't get me wrong. I love A.J. Dillon. He's a great guy. He really hasn't lived up on it on the field as much as people had hoped he would. But I think the big loss would more be Aaron Jones than anything. But as we said earlier, it is a business. Some decisions have to be made. I would hate to lose Bakhtiari too, but I understand the contract. I don't know if that's something that can get worked out. I don't know if that's something David Bakhtiari would want worked out. I don't know if that's something Brian Gutekunst would want worked out. But, it's going to be an interesting couple of years now that the money for Rodgers is coming off the books. But so we look at the running backs. I kind of touched on the wide receivers a little bit earlier. I do want your opinion on those guys, but I'm going to lump it in with the tight ends because they're all a young group. So, they're going to have their growing pains. It's the first time in a long time the Packers have had, such athletic tight ends that are at a decent age. It's not a reclamation project like a Jimmy Graham or a Martellus Bennett or Jared Cook or one of those, but it's the first time we've got young, athletic type tight ends, and it's the first time in a long time we have actual players at the wide receiver core. Watson, Dobbs, Turay, Reed, Wicks, and Dubose or however you pronounce his last name. Sorry, Grant. Again, if you go back to the beginning of the podcast, I'm not great with names. So, but what are your feelings on those groups as a whole? I know fans need to have their expectations tempered with them, but, right now people are riding on cloud 9 because of the names that we have there right now. So what are you looking at with those guys?
What I saw in the first year from Watson and Dobbs, it was all right, but you also need to temper your expectations. A lot of players don't progress as much as they do, and people might call it a sophomore slump, a regression. It's not always the regression, but if they don't progress as much as you think they would, or you hope you would, you see it as a regression. Now, remember how nice years Kenny Golladay and DJ Chark had as development receivers. Oh my God, if he's doing this much in this X year, what's he going to do? Where are these guys right now? So temper your expectations. The Packers don't really whiff at receivers as much as some other teams do, but they do. It happens.
They have their moments.
They have their moments. Shout out to Amari Rodgers.
Hey, now, I'm not going to bash Rodgers. I think he had a bum deal in Green Bay, but he wasn't what we were expecting, but I think he got a bum deal in Green Bay.
Yeah. So what I'm looking for in receivers, unless you're drafting them in the first round, which we don't, you are looking at athleticism and football smarts, which means they should be coachable and they should be team players. You have those three, then the rest will come. You can just coach them up, and then they'll be good to go second, third year. Tight ends maybe add a year to that. So this is what they've been doing for a while, which Rodgers wasn't a big fan of because he needed Watson now, not in 2023. Yeah. So I understand where he's coming from, but our approach right now is that we have a year or two to recover from salary cap hell. So it's good that we drafted projects, raw development guys. It's fine, and it's going to be all right. Would I have preferred to have a veteran receiver presence just to be mentoring the players like Sammy Watkins in the room? Sure, that would have been nice. But hey, you never know. You can start your own. They all gel and grow up all together. You have 4 wide receivers growing up all together with their QB. I could see that happening too. So we have a good young stable of receivers, and as they say, if you have a lot of at-bats, you are sure to hit a home run more often. So I'm happy about that. As for tight ends, definitely feel the same thing. It's hard to be a tight end in the NFL. So if they can contribute first year, fine. But by the second year, I want to see those two bookending the line. And however they decide to use Josiah DeGora, because people love him a lot. His play, he as a person, probably he's nice as hell, but I don't know. I don't know if we have to get rid of tight end. I think he will be the odd man out. So the other two, Kraft and Musgrave, those I expect them to be bookending by year 2. Early year 2, they have a year to develop, but as good as I've seen their film in college, they should contribute even first year. They're athletic as hell. And the last time we had this athletic tight end group, we had Jermel Finley of his injury fame.
Yeah.
And he, as good as he wasn't a complete product either at that point. He had his issues.
Yeah.
So these guys, we will hopefully not have them injured, and we do not have the shadow of Rodgers' closing window to have expectations on them anymore. So take your time, take this year, recover from cap hell, develop the guys you see here. Let's see what we have with Jordan Love. Let's see if you want to stick with Joe Barry. Okay, that's your last season mate.
Right? Yeah.
And this is the mate I'm putting in for the Aussie listeners. This is your last season, Barry. Show us what you have. This is as talented a roster as a lot of people have in the NFL in terms of just development potential. I know you have your holes, safeties an issue. We don't have depth at inside linemen. Take this year, okay? Rest. Take this year. See what you have, because you're never going to get good free agents in Green Bay. It's just not going to happen. For a bunch of reasons. This time, this team is not a Super Bowl contender, so Charles Woodson and Ryan Pickett are not showing up anytime soon. Tax is an issue, right? State tax is an issue. They would rather go to Florida.
I don't think it's as bad as some other states, but it's definitely not as good as others.
Yeah, and the last thing is that this is not a draw. The town, as much as we like it, is not a big draw for players who are famous, have money, and they want to blow it. They're in their 20s. Yeah, life is good. Testosterone coming out of their ears.
Right.
Do you want to be in Green Bay day after day? So that is the issue. And also, you are not going to be getting out of local ad revenue. You're not going to be sponsored a lot there. So add all these together, you have to be a draft and develop team. You have to be. So this is what the road they... Now that the Aaron Rodgers and his goddamn window is gone, we can go back to being a draft and develop team and just have, like, if Jordan Love turns out to be the real deal, have 10, 15 years of franchise QB level play and be a contender year after year, take shots at the playoffs. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to be a different team.
Yeah, and that's the big question, is if Jordan Love can show that he is the player that they had hoped when they drafted him, then maybe he can draw in some of those free agents. But, that quick trip money isn't going to draw too many people into the state. So it's, I get you. I've always said with the draft stuff that I've done, and I've gained this opinion from a lot of people that I've followed that do the draft. it usually takes 3 years for a player to develop into what you know he's going to be. The first year is just them getting used to the league. The second year is them applying what they learned from the first year, and the third year is where they turn it all or put it all together and become that player. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it takes shorter time, sometimes it takes a little bit of longer time. But, you've always got to temper expectations on everything. I mean, we've even got to temper expectations on Jordan Love. We really have no clue what Jordan's going to be. So, but like you said, the good thing is they're all young. They're all going to be able to gel together. They're all going to be able to grow up together. They're all going to be able to work together. I do agree, and I think I've said it on our podcast before, that I wish they would bring in somebody, like a veteran wide receiver, not necessarily to sign him, because I don't know who you would release to fill, to allow that veteran to fill a spot. But to bring somebody in as a special advisor to be that guy that can, the player, the young guys can go to and say, hey, this guy's dogging me out there on the field. What do I need to do? He's not biting on any of my stuff. What do I got to do? And then that guy can say, well, just, take that extra step, or, hold a beat longer, or whatever it is. Nothing against Jason Vrabel, but, he played quarterback at Marietta College in Ohio. Yeah, that's great and all, and he can help out tremendously when it comes to communication with your quarterback, but does he have the experience to help that receiver in developing what he needs to have? And like you said it, there's nobody on the team that really can lean on. Right now our veterans are 3 guys that were rookies last year. So there's no leadership there. That's why I was kind of hoping they would bring Big Dog back, Mercedes Lewis, because at least he could have been a voice in there to help the young guys say, all right, take a breath, take a step back, relax, do your thing. You don't need to be the superhero and stuff like that. But, they've got a plan. I keep telling this to everybody. I'm really excited for this year because it's an unknown. This is the first time we've really had an unknown season in a long time. And it could be really good. It could be really bad. Either way, we're going to have 2 first-round draft picks next year, knock on wood. If something doesn't work out, we just start again.
Yeah, and I don't think we're drafting defensive back in the first round as much as we used to, but we're still picking defenders. And last time we have 2 first-round picks. Yeah, you know what we did. But I like those picks. I stand behind them, and I share your optimism for the future in that regard as well. But as we always say, it all comes down to how Jordan Love plays. It's a good pick to begin with, and it's developed by Matt LaFleur. His career is molded by him. So how he does reflects on them too. So if he turns out to be bad, it's their jobs on the line too.
Yeah.
So they ride with this guy. So it makes sense. They favored him. They built Russell a little more toward him than Rodgers. So it makes sense. And Love has not 1 but 2 pairs of really big shoes to fill.
Right.
Good thing is Green Bay is not a rabid fan base. They're not going to hang you out to dry.
Well, now
some are.
Well, I'm going to take a step back there because you may want to remember the first year Rodgers took over for Favre.
Yeah.
They were booing the poor guy at family night. At a practice, they booed him out of the stadium. So I'm not going to say they're not rabid and they won't turn on this guy quickly, but they're going to have – he's got a short leash with the fans right now. If things start going sideways, I could see them turning on him quick because it's the same kind of situation. Whereas they were ready to turn on Rodgers in a snap of the fingers because they got rid of Favre to keep Rodgers. I could see the same thing happening with Love and that. So
I have a little bit more optimism on that front because people think that Rodgers' divorce, let's say, was bitter Oh boy, if you haven't seen how far it went, it was absolute hell. He showed up to training camp like, a divorce dad coming. So I want to see my kids. It was very very very, very bad. And people loved Far a lot because before him there was nothing, and he was a lovable guy, and like it's like the hillbilly Midwestern. He could have been a Midwestern the way he was. And they got rid of him for this guy from California who is more aloof and who's and then of course they're going to stand on him. But and the relationship to mend between Favre and Rodgers took a while.
It did.
Considering that awkward NFL honors night. I think it was it the SPs? I think it was NFL honors. They were on the shared stage together. They make this awkward joke. Rodgers did a smirk, and they met his fences, let's say. But there's nothing like that going on between Rodgers and Love now, because he chose to, even if it is like that, or he makes it look like that, people feed off that energy. So I think Love could get a little bit more love, to make a dad joke. So a little bit more patience, but this is still the NFL, and what have you done for me lately, and put up or shut up. I agree with that, but he will not be as harshly judged as in some other colder fan bases like Pittsburgh. They would eviscerate him.
Yeah, or New York. That's why I keep saying that if I was going to follow another team, it would be the Jets right now, because I could just see the Jets fans eating Rodgers alive. I've gotten into disagreements with people, but I really think that the way the Jets fans are thinking they've got, they're basically booking their trips to the Super Bowl now. I could just see if Rodgers doesn't lead them to the promised land, that they will turn on him in a heartbeat. So but I mean, I'm not going to say they're going to be out there, ready to let loose the dogs and have their torches and pitchforks to take out Love, but I also think he's got a shortish leash because of, it's change, and who really likes to have change. We all were hoping we'd have Rodgers for 100 years when we knew it wasn't going to be possible to have Rodgers for 100 years. But it's really going to be something to see. I'm really, like I keep saying, I'm really excited for this year. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know the time differences and everything else. You're up early, I'm up late. Is there anything else you would like to touch on before we close things out?
Oh, nothing. Just hello to all the listeners. I love talking Packers. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. Enjoy this underdog year, one we've never had, like, as far as I can remember. When have we ever been the underdogs in our division? So enjoy that. Watch with optimism all the receivers growing up. Watch your QB as he takes his baby steps, let's say. It's a lot of fun. Enjoy this year. Enjoy your fandom, and go catch a Packers game if you can. And if not, just interact with us on Twitter. I love Packers Twitter with all the overreaction and messing around with Bears Twitter and the rivalry with the Jets. Where did that come from? Feuding with Jets Twitter users. Where did that come from? But it's a lot of fun, and enjoy football. It's a lot of fun. Don't take it too seriously. It's not life or death. I just love football. I love football fans. I love the Packers, and I hope you did that too. That's all I got to say.
That's great. Hilmi, it was great having you on. I really appreciate it. Hopefully next time we get you on, we can have Nick here. Unfortunately, like I said, he's had a last-minute issue pop up. Is there anything you want to plug before we say, you want to give out your Twitter and, where they can find you and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. My Twitter is Hilmi, HILMI _coach. And you'll probably give a link when you put the podcast up on Twitter, so they can.
Yep.
I just add me, not because I need followers, but I want to interact with as many Packers fans as possible. I love doing that on Twitter, and I do NFL TR podcast, but in Turkish, so your viewers are not probably going to, unless AI can do voice translations on the go, which could happen. You never know.
Who knows?
Until then, let's just stick to Twitter and let's have a fun, great year.
That sounds good to me. Oh, and I just remembered, I asked for questions before we recorded, and I just want to say, Ben, what I do when no one is looking is nothing, because I'm not that good at hiding things. So take that for what it's worth.
Is that also a question for me?
If you want to answer it, his question was exactly this. So you have reference. He goes, "What do you do when no one is looking?"
I'm a man. We do nothing in the blink of an eye. Just if we don't have to do anything, then we do just that. Nothing. I just sit around and look around. Yeah. I don't need to talk to anyone. I don't need to do anything. But now I'm going through my midlife crisis, so I'm trying to get in shape a lot. So I torture myself a lot.
I feel you.
Yeah, if anyone coming up to that age, it will happen to you. Testosterone drops while people, your own son starts becoming an athlete, and it hurts, and I want to be in shape. I can't lift anything, and it takes a week to recover from a leg workout.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what's going on.
But no, normally Nick would have this nice little send off for everything, but I'm not Nick, and I didn't prep a lot for this, so I'm going to go back and read one of his old ones.
Why waste?
Why waste? So you can find our podcast at _Packers on Twitter. You can find Nick at Nicholas GRGR. You can find me at Iowa _Joe86. Please do like and subscribe. Give us a rating, whatever you got to do. We really want to bump up. We want to get out there. Like I said, if we can really make this into something, hopefully we can get Nick over here to visit Lambeau one of these days. But we need your guys' help, because without you, we're basically talking to nothing. So, please do like and subscribe. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If we're not on the platform you listen to, let me know. Send us a message, and I will make sure we get there as soon as we can. So with that all being said, I hope you guys have a great evening. Himli, it was great to have you on. You enjoy your day. I'm going to enjoy my night. Go Pack, go, and I'll see you later.
Bye, guys.